We are here today to show you how to disassemble, clean, and reassemble your RavenCrest Tactical Knife using our new OTF Knife Care Kits. Let's get started. Alright, let's go over what comes in the Care Kit. We have a torch key, we have 2 springs, and we have 7 screws. Alright, let's get ready to disassemble your knife. I recommend, and I personally use, a towel to make sure your knife doesn't get scratched or doesn't scratch up the surface you're using. If you don't have a towel available, a paper towel will work. Anything is better than nothing. First step would be to grab your knife and to take it out of its sheath. And first thing would be to disengage the blade. And you can do that by simply firing it against an object such as your towel, and just make sure the blade is firing loose or sliding loose in its holder. And then grab your torch key and begin to disassemble the screws, or begin to unscrew. Alright, so now we're just taking apart or unscrewing the 6 screws that hold the top of the handle to the bottom. When all 6 screws are unscrewed, you simply just pull up on the top. And if the screws happen to pop out like that, which is very common, just grab them and put them to the side. You'll notice that the button also comes off. Take that and put it to the side. In the center is a slider and a main spring. Take that and put it spring down. You'll notice the blade is still in the housing. When you take the blade out, you will notice there's a hinge on the top. Use your finger to hold that hinge and slide the blade out. Okay, so now we're going to go over cleaning the internal parts of the knife that require cleaning. We're going to start with the main spring and the slider. The best way to take the spring off of the slider would be to hold the slider with one hand while pushing down on one of the teeth of the spring until it pops right loose. And it doesn't take much. It'll come right off, and there's the main spring separated from the slider. To clean the spring and the slider, we use a dry lube that you can find at any Home Depot or any kind of hardware store. It needs to be a dry lube. Spray a little bit onto the spring and then dab it off, the excess, and let it dry. The next spots that need cleaning would be the 2 small spring chambers on the bottom of the handle. Just put a little spray in each spot and dab off the excess. Just let that dry for a second. And while that dries, you can go back and begin to now assemble the main spring back onto the main slider. To do that, look at the slider. You'll notice that on the right hand side, there is a notch cut out. In that notch, we need to put the large tooth of the spring. You'll notice on the spring that there are 2 teeth that make an L. One is a small L and one is a large L. You want to make sure that the large L fits into the notch of the main slider. The next step would be to hold the spring with one hand and push up on it while you simply move the second tooth in place with the other hand. There's other ways to do this, such as pulling it forward. This takes more strength and hurts the hands. We greatly recommend doing it this way, where you just simply pull up and slide it right into place. And that's all clean. Okay, now let's reassemble our knife. First step would be to put the blade back into the bottom of the handle. To do this, very carefully grab the top of the blade and slide it into the handle until it stops. When it stops, take your hand and gently lift up on the slider channel and allow the blade to slide in, not fully, but about halfway. The next step would be to take the main slider and the main spring and place it into place. You'll know it's in place properly when it moves easily in and out. If you put it in upside down, you'll know. The next step would be to take the button, and this step actually is 2 things at once. With one hand, you're going to take the button and you're going to hold it against the body of the knife, while with the other hand you take the top of the handle and press it together. At this point, the button should be attached to the handle, it shouldn't fall off, and everything should be in place. From here, we're simply going to put our screws back in and then tighten everything up. I recommend a certain way of doing this to make sure that your knife handle seats properly when screwing down. So I recommend starting with one of the corners and lightly snugging that screw in. Not all the way in, but just enough to where it's holding it down. Then I go to the diagonal screw from that first screw and do the same thing. Just a little light snug screwing, and then I go down to the next corner and do the same thing. Then over across to the final corner. Just lightly snug that screw in. Just about when it gives you a little resistance. Then go to the middle. Doesn't matter which one you start with. I always go for the top, but doesn't matter. Nice and snug, a little snug. Now once I have them all in place, I do a simple test to make sure the button moves smoothly, which it does. Then I go back and I do a final little quarter turn snug, just to make sure that the screws are in there nice and tight. There we go. From there, you're going to want to re-engage your blade. To do this, you do it very carefully. Hold the knife in one hand, grab the blade in the other, pinch tightly, and pull up till you hear a little click. For this model, we did not have to take off the glass breaker or the clip to disassemble the knife. But if you did want to do that, here's how you do it. Simply hold up your knife, grab your L-shaped Torx key, and slide it into one of the holes of the glass breaker. Once it's in there secured, turn counterclockwise until it breaks free. Keep turning until it comes off. Feel free to change your clip, do whatever you need. To reinstall, put your clip back on. Line up the threading of the breaker to the body of the handle so that it lines up evenly. Then hand tighten. Once it's hand tightened, put your L key back in and turn clockwise until it's very tight. And that's it. We recommend that you disassemble and clean your RavenCrest Tactical Knife about every 30 days. Hey, we really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about disassembling your knife or our knives in general, please email us at ravencresttactical@gmail.com or visit us on the web at ravencresttactical.com or theknifeknife.com.